Hey, everybody. This is Dawn Ressel, and I am with my dear friend and fellow guide in the mystery school, Lorraine Pimienta.
Hi, good to be here, Dawn.
Thanks for being here. So, today we're going to chat about Lorraine's story that she generously shared in this book, Ancient Healings, Modern Miracles. And she's going to talk about her own miracle of how she healed from some really serious, debilitating mental health issues through the energy healing and initiations with the Modern Mystery School.
Yeah, so should I just get into it?
Well, I know you had a childhood that was quite difficult. And so that's kind of the start of the story, right? So why don't we start there? Give people a little bit of context.
Sure. So I always like to say that, the first 9 months of my life started out like any other. I was born in Los Angeles to my parents. They were newlyweds. Uh, and we are a Mexican American family, which is very, we're very typical Los Angeles, um, you know, new family, and everything was fine. But it was at my 9-month-old appointment, my mom took me to the doctors just for your baby wellness checkup, and the doctor felt my abdomen and he felt that there was like a lump, like things weren't quite right. So he told my mom to take me to Children's Hospital Los Angeles right away. And after a barrage of tests, they found that I had a massive abdominal tumor, and that tumor was attached to my kidneys, and it was childhood kidney cancer. So I went through chemotherapy, surgery, the works. I was cured. I went into remission, and then a couple of years later, I relapsed. So I had bilateral Wilms tumor, so cancer in both the kidneys. So that was quite big to go through in the first 3 years of my life. I have flashes of memories from this, but as I grew up, it was told to my parents that I was going to get sick again, because they had removed most of my kidneys, so my right one fully, and then my left one about 80%. And they did say eventually there's going to come a time where the 20% left of one kidney is going to fail. So I didn't actually know this. It might have been told to me, but I just don't remember. And I started to have like a decline when I was a teenager. And I was very skinny. I was very petite for my age. And I started to feel it was getting harder to do some normal activities, like getting up off the floor to a standing position, or staying awake the whole day, or focusing in school. And I had lost my appetite completely. So I was getting thinner and thinner. And, when you're teenage years are hard for anybody, and I was no exception. But when I found I couldn't even keep up with my peers, and just with kidney failure, your kidneys do clean out the toxins in your physical body. So I was just getting completely backed up with toxins, which was affecting everything from my heart to my blood pressure to, I was getting very dizzy. So I'm sure it was affecting my brain as well. It was interrupting normal function of my body. And that was really hard because I wanted to block out what was happening to me. I didn't want to accept that I was as sick as I was. And I didn't actually even have the social skills to really communicate my needs or what I needed to my peers, my teachers around me. So a lot of times I was just coming off as very spacey and not with it. And that was really hard, because people would come up with an automatic judgment about what was happening, or like how I was acting. And then I would start to internalize that sort of thing. So I started to tell myself a story about me that wasn't true, that I wasn't a great person because everybody's reacting to me in a negative way. And even though I wasn't actually telling anybody what was happening to me, that I was going into end stage kidney failure. So I was on the transplant list from about 16 years old, to 18. And normally the transplant list, well, where I live in Orange County, Los Angeles, it's about 7 years. It could be even more because there's such a shortage of organs. So when I received my kidney transplant at 18, I knew I was desperately ill. I could feel it in all aspects. It was bleeding into all aspects of my life. I couldn't even stay awake the whole day. But when I received my transplant, after having the first 18 years of my life being very tainted from being sick, I was not a happy person at all. Even after I started to get my physical health, I saw myself as, this damaged person. And I was telling myself that, because I didn't love myself, I didn't understand myself. I saw myself as somebody who was just sickly and couldn't really contribute to the world.
Let's stop there for a minute,
Yeah.
Lorraine, if you don't mind. I just want to recap a little bit and then we can move forward with the story. So you were very sick, you had a kidney transplant now, and you were sick most of your childhood,
Mhm.
but your transplant was successful.
It was.
But all of that, many years of being physically sick and being treated differently and all of the trauma you went through left you with some mental health issues and some emotional scars.
It did.
So let's talk about what happened as a result. Like what happened next as you were dealing with the ramifications of being healthy physically, but not mentally healthy.
So I decided to still go on the community college university path because I wanted a normal life as much as I could. But I was very insular and I had these negative thought patterns that I really had a hard time shaking. And, at that point in my life, I asked for help. I asked for a change. It was like I had called out to the universe. I don't even know who I asked, but it was a calling out from deep within my soul. And I found that God always answers my prayers, even not in the ways that I always think they should be answered. And while I was at community college, I was in a communications class because I thought if I was able to communicate with people better, which is my reasons for taking this class, I would feel better. And I met my first great spiritual teacher, who's named Barbara Bullard. And Barbara she was very good at stopping me from going on these spirals of negativity, which I had with myself. But she did it in a very, very loving way. And she introduced me to, to the idea that our DNA could, there's a spiritual part of our DNA. And that's when she introduced me to my guide. And she brought my guide into the classroom where my guide actually demonstrated a life activation in front of the class. And we all had to put our names in to get picked. And I was hoping I was going to get picked. I didn't get picked, but perhaps that was a blessing because I would have thought, okay, I've had a taster of what is a part of the light activation, the light infusion in the classroom. But instead I contacted my guide and I said, can I please have a healing? At first I thought I wanted a cord cutting, but she was like, after listening to me, she's like, why don't you go in for the full life activation? I trusted her. After that,
let's talk a little bit about what the life activation is, because there might be people listening who've heard that term for the first time.
Yeah.
So what is the life activation?
So the life activation is a very ancient healing modality that works with the biosphere or the energy system around a person to actually prepare you and to prepare for your DNA to receive the actual life activation itself. And the life activation actually takes light and puts it into your DNA, which allows your DNA to express itself fully. And this has been used for all humans. And this was actually designed and, studied using the scientific method to make sure that it is working for all people. And even why it worked for me, it didn't matter if I had a transplant or cancer or anything like that. It works for all people. And I felt an immediate shift. I looked at it wasn't even like a something I was very conscious of, but I had this shift where I looked at the choices that I had made, the lies that I had told myself about me, and even the people who I had surrounded myself with. After that life activation, I mean, immediately after, I was speaking to my guide, and she told me about Empower Thyself. And I had met a couple of people in the mystery school, and I thought that the people in the mystery school were great. I thought they were different from me in terms of they were not getting battered by life like I was getting battered by life. And I wanted to be like that. I was like, come on, things have happened, but I'm really young, so I need to figure out how I'm going to live with this.
And
So I
how
went
old were you at this point where you just had your life activation, about to do Empower Thyself initiation?
really young. I was 20. I was
Uh-huh.
20 years old.
Yeah. Well, you had the blessing of finding it early in life.
Yeah, I have. And because of the Empower Thyself class, I had the tools given to me very early in life, at the very earliest onset of adulthood, to be able to manage my energy and to be able to, connect into what I guess you could even say, the unseen, but the very real forces, and actually have the spiritual training to be able to access all of the energy around me. So that's why I wasn't getting battered, because I had my rituals, I had my initiation. So when life happens, as it always does, it doesn't knock you off of your course.
So let's talk about where you are now. So you did your Empower Thyself initiation when you were 20. And you've had a lot of experience using the tools with the Modern Mystery School. Now you're even a guide. So you teach Empower Thyself initiation for other people now. So let's talk about your life today, and how do you think it's different than it would have been had you not found the school?
That's a good question. I have no idea where I would be if I didn't find the school. I don't even know how things would have panned out for me,
Mm.
because after I became an initiate, it was like this sense of bravery had come over me that I never had. Like at that point, I always wanted to move to London. But I thought it was just something I was going to dream about, but something that was never actually going to happen. And I remember right after I was initiated, I actually said out loud, while we were all chatting right before we were going to leave, I think I'm going to move to London. And I was told at that time, we're like, great, go for it. So I did. So that was August. And then I moved to London in December. So that was pretty quick. And I thought I was going to just have a 6-month working holiday over there, but I ended up being there for 13 years, where I continued my spiritual training with the mystery school. And I ended up becoming a British citizen. I ended up seeing a lot of the world. I did end up having a corporate career. I ended up graduating from university. I've had a great life. I've had a very adventurous one, but all in the same time, I kept up my spiritual studies, and I used the tools given to me by the mystery school and by the senior teachers. And that has really, really sustained me, that no matter what, I even said the most consistent thing in my life has been the path and the lineage of King Solomon. And no matter what country I'm in, no matter what stage of life I'm in, it is something that has kept me on the clear, on the straight and narrow.
Mm.
It has kept me from, going off the deep end, which I got very close to doing earlier on in my life.
Mhm.
And I decided to become a guide, again, because these tools transcend all of the human ups and downs. And I thought, you know what, where would I be if my guide wasn't doing the work during that time?
Right.
I mean, like you said, I don't know. I don't know. No, we're
Right.
good.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Unfortunately, I mean, I probably do know where I would be, and it would be the same as it was before, which was not very happy. It was just a very mediocre, dull life. So, but the thing I really appreciate about your story, Lorraine, is um, that we talk a lot about physical illnesses like the ones that you've had cancer and you went through kidney disease failure. But we don't often talk about the mental aspect, the mental health aspect that has, that toll that it takes on people when they've had that kind of illness. We think, oh, they've recovered physically, so everything's great. And then, but it's not always, right? It has some after effects that people deal with much longer. And you were lucky enough to find tools that helped you recover from that very quickly, much more quickly than you would have on your own. So one question I have for you is, what would you say to someone who is a young person, just reaching adulthood like you were when you found the school? Why should they do it? Why should they get their life activation and do Empower Thyself if they're a young person with so much life ahead of them?
That's a great question. One of the things I've always been told in the mystery school is that I was so lucky that I found this when I did. Because, if you're just starting out adulthood, it's not easy. You are actually quite protected as a child and a teenager in, the family system, your school, that sort of thing. There are a lot of, everything's very structured in what you do. And when you become an adult, it's a lot less structured. You have to make your own way. You have to make your own mistakes in order to learn, or at least I did. I wouldn't take advice. I just went for it. And the tools and the initiations, the life activation is going to give you a foundation for you to build your life upon, a foundation of higher vibration and light. So you got a lot of life, you got a lot of decades ahead of you. Especially if you're a young person, why wouldn't you want to give yourself the greatest start that is on planet Earth, which is starting out the path? That's what I'd say.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I found it much later in life than you, about 20 years later than you. But it works for everybody at every age, because no matter where you are, there's always a way to get better, and there's always a way to improve your life, and there's always a way to heal. And that is going to have a ripple effect on your family, your friends, your community, your coworkers. And so I always say that the more healing we do for ourselves, really the more that we're serving humanity, because it's not just about us. It's not a selfish act in any way to focus on your own healing, because it helps other people around you. So no matter what age, I think people should do the life activation and Empower Thyself initiation. But it is an interesting question when someone is quite young and they think they're almost invincible in some ways, right? When they're that age, and maybe they're not even thinking too far ahead of what's going to come next in their life. So it's still very valuable to have these tools even at that age, based on what you said, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And especially because when you don't know what could go wrong, because you don't have the experience, which is a blessing when you're young. I mean, the reason I moved to London when I was 20, because I was like, why would anything go wrong? I had no idea.
Right.
But I made it. I was there 13 years. And honestly, I can say the reason I made it happen is because I had my initiations and the tools behind me 100%.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to say one quick thing about Empower Thyself initiation, since we didn't really define it. And people, again, they might be hearing this for the first time or just not be very familiar with it. So after the life activation, which Lorraine explained really well, you do have the option to do Empower Thyself initiation, which is a 2-day workshop where you get a whole toolbox of things to support you in creating the life you really want. You get rituals, you get teachings that are ancient metaphysical teachings on things that, questions that I always had, when I was trying to figure out the state of the world. Why am I here? What does this all mean? A lot of those answers came to me in Empower Thyself initiation, and then also opened up better questions to ask, even deeper questions. And I continue to keep asking questions. It's a never ending journey of seeking once you begin, but it's a very rewarding journey. And so it really begins, the path begins at Empower Thyself initiation. And then there's more steps beyond that if someone so chooses. But that's a foundational step that I think would help anyone in their spiritual progression. And so I just want to talk one more time about the book and let people know that Lorraine's story, as well as 23 other stories, are available in this book, Ancient Healings, Modern Miracles. You can get it on Amazon in hardcover or Kindle. And I'd love to hear your feedback. If you happen to read the book, if you happen to read Lorraine's stories and the other stories, if there's something that really resonates with you, I'm sure we'd love to hear about it. And if you have any questions after hearing Lorraine's story, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll get back to you. But I think we'll just leave it here and just say you can get in touch with us. If you have more questions about the Modern Mystery School, about life activation, about Empower Thyself initiation. So I'm Dawn Ressel. I'm here in San Diego, California. And Lorraine.
Hi, yes, I'm in Orange County, South Orange County, so Laguna Niguel, and but I practice out of Irvine.
Yeah, so if you are in Southern California, feel free to reach out to one of us and we'll put our contact information in the comments. And if you're not in Southern California, no worries, because we have practitioners all over the world. So we'd be happy to connect you with someone in your area. So thanks again, Lorraine, for sharing your story. I think it's really compelling and powerful, and I'm sure people will really enjoy hearing it. It's very inspiring.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. Bye, everyone.